Welcome to Standards Map, a partnership-based effort to enhance access to information on private standards and to increase opportunities for sustainable production and trade. This video aims to provide a very quick introduction to the world of private standards by reviewing what a standard is, what are the different types of standards, and finally, by reviewing the standards which are included in Standards Map. Users wishing to see further information on standards are invited to view the reference materials section of the Standards Map website. There are various definitions of the term standard in the context of international trade. Nevertheless, most definitions provided by the International Standards Organization (ISO) and the World Trade Organization (WTO) contain common elements and define a standard as a document that prescribes rules, guidelines, or characteristics for products, services, or production processes. Standards are important as they play a key role in international trade. Standards facilitate the exchange of products and therefore provide a basic condition for the efficient functioning of international markets. By sharing a common understanding, trading partners can communicate more easily, have common expectations about each other's products, and can trust the compatibility of joint production. Standards are generally divided into two main categories: private standards and public standards. It is important to note that Standards Map only provides information on private standards. Private standards are voluntary by definition. Private standards are therefore not enforceable by national or international law. They are developed outside the auspices of national, regional, and international authorities that are responsible for public standards. They are set by non-governmental entities such as companies, sectoral organizations, consortia, non-governmental organizations (NGOs), and initiatives involving multiple stakeholders. The decision by a supplier to comply with private standards is effectively a business decision and not imposed by a governmental authority. Nevertheless, there are many cases where large buyers require compliance to certain private standards, effectively setting de facto requirements for entry to the market. The second category of standards are public standards. These are not addressed in Standards Map. Public standards are most of the time mandatory by law. If exporters and producers do not comply with these standards, their exports will not be allowed to enter foreign markets. Public standards are set by public authorities on national, regional, or international levels. Public standards are commonly called non-tariff measures. Typically, these public standards take the form of technical regulations or sanitary and phytosanitary measures, as defined under the corresponding WTO agreements. Apart from the broad categories of private versus public standards, these can also be distinguished according to other criteria. For example, the attributes they address. That is to say, standards can impose requirements and regulations on the way in which a product or service is produced or processed. Standards might include, for instance, specifications about a product's weight, size, performance, or quality, safety requirements, labeling and packaging rules, and environmental, ethical, and social concerns. Standards can also be distinguished in terms of the objectives of standard setters and adopters. For example, food safety standards, quality standards, labor standards, environmental standards, or the segment of the value chain they address, for example, production standards, manufacturing standards, or distribution standards. By their target audience, for example, business to consumer, business to business standard, and finally, sectoral, geographic, or product scope. While some private standards are global in scope, others can be limited to only a handful of countries. Furthermore, while some standards address a single commodity, such as the Better Cotton Initiative, BCI, others apply to multiple products, such as the Fair Trade Standards, or entire sectors, such as the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC standards. In Standards Map, these standard systems are referenced as product or industry specific, as they set up requirements applicable to specific products or industries. Other standards, such as the Social Accountability International, SA 8000, or the Global GAP, can apply to any particular product, industry or process, as their requirements remain the same for all products and processes. These standards are categorized as generic standard systems in Standards Map. Please note that the standards currently referenced in Standard Maps are by no means exhaustive or intended to exclude non-participating standards.